Good afternoon. Welcome to CIA Live, part of Community Inclusion Ambassadors. So before we get started on our topic, which is the in-class document, more importantly Appendix D, Special Education Overview, let's go over some of the things that are going on, tonight and tomorrow. The first thing is our Zoom meeting for the caregivers group will be at 6 o'clock, or as soon as this live stream's over, I'll hop over there to the Zoom meeting, and you'll see that in your description for the link to it. The other thing that's going on, let me see if I can pull up the screen share here. Our friends over at Lost River tomorrow are having their open mic night. So that's just a good time to get out, and looks like it's going to be about 70 to 90 degrees tomorrow, so it's supposed to be 7 to 9 o'clock. And if you want more information, just head over to their Facebook page, Lost River Market and Deli, and you'll be able to find more information, and if they have any updates about it, you'll be able to find out about it first. Okay, let me switch back. All right. So, as some of you know, I went to the Springs Valley School Board meeting. The school board was more receptive to hearing about the need for special education in their reopening plan, which is what the in-class document was about, as guidance for the schools. The draft, or the one that the superintendent has posted, is not any better than the original. It is, to be very honest, still going to be very much of a conflict and a lot of predetermination in his document. Any superintendent that wants an idea what's a good document, I know people are saying don't compare schools, but go over to Seymour Community Schools, go to South Harrison websites and look at their documents. They have special education included as a section. And that's all we're asking, is that you go ahead and continue to think about these families the same way that you do about everybody. If it was your child, your grandchild, what would you want? You would want them to let your family know how their education is going to be. So that's all we're asking for. Okay. So we're going to hop into Appendix D of the in-class document. We're just going to go through and we're going to review it, because there's a lot of Indiana statutes and things that the state said must be done for our students with special education programs. Or the way I like that they phrase it is students with disabilities, because especially in our area, we got a lot of kids that have medical conditions that have never gotten a 504 or an IEP. So they're going to be those kids are really going to be suffering as the ones that the school said they don't need it because they're doing well in school. This year is going to be the year that they're going to need it. So schools, be ready. Parents, be ready. This is going to be one of those big years. And like everyone's saying, this school year is going to be very fluid. These documents are very fluid, and they can change very quickly. So I'm going to go back to the screen share here. And we're going to head over to the in-class document. Okay. So let me scroll up here. So we're on page 26 of the in-class document. There is a link in our description to it. Appendix D is mainly just a special education overview. I'm going to highlight our first paragraph here. And for the most part, this one here is really just talking with the schools about the need to work with local health departments and community stakeholders to develop a community mitigated strategy to protect high-risk populations and community health systems, and minimize the disruption to teaching and learning while protecting students, staff from social stigma and discrimination. Discrimination don't happen around here, does it? Well, if you're a parent with a child with special needs, especially one that's more visual, you probably know as well as I do that happens here quite often. And it's just rolled under the rug. Okay, so the next paragraph is something that I feel like it was included to help us parents understand a little bit. District schools should develop a strong communication plan with families to discuss the delivery method of instruction for students with disabilities, and appropriate platform for delivery of special education related services must be identified. Schools and districts must ensure that adequate staffing is available to meet the needs of all students with IEPs in the district. So basically, they're just saying the schools need to have this plan so that they can continue to meet these needs for these students as they go into the school year and through it. Now, the case conference committee section here, there wasn't really any changes, and as the first paragraph here is going to tell us why. Under annual case reviews, at this time there has been no waivers of the requirements of convening the case conference committee annually to conduct the annual case review ACR, consistent with the requirements of 511 Indiana Administrative Code IAC 742.5A2. Districts and schools must conduct ARCs within 1 year time limit, regardless of school closure status. In the state level and on the national level, the waivers that were issued in education were not really as much in the areas of students with disabilities. They were in the areas of finance and things of that nature, more in testing requirements, assessments, school assessments, and not our special education evaluations. So I'll talk about that here in a minute. Case conference committee meetings, reviews, and revise IEPs. As schools and districts plan to reopen buildings to provide in-person instruction, CCC case conference committees meetings with parents should be scheduled to review the provision of services and educational progress of each student. Discussion should determine whether or not there is a need to adjust the frequency or duration of services. We went through a very big thing here with COVID, and all these children are trying to adjust, all of us adults are. So services might need to change. Some areas that they were receiving services might need to get adjusted to help meet other needs that have now developed. Or as we go through the educational needs and how they can be measured, it's going to help cover some of this information. Okay, so educational needs can be measured by considering whether the student participated in continuous learning opportunities provided by the school and district during COVID-19 school building closures. Parent observations of students learning during the continuous learning opportunities provided by the school district. Parents, you were there with them. The teachers weren't there all the time. They want to know what you seen, what they struggled on. That's going to help decide how they learn. Teacher observations of students learning in the continuous learning opportunities provided by the school district. So this is talking about when the teachers were able to see the grading, able to do the little Zoom calls with the students and talk with them. That information can still help make a decision on how their IEPs are going to look this year, how the services are going to be provided or moving forward for them. Whether their services identified in the student's IEP prior to school closure that the school or district was unable to provide during the building closure due to the restrictions on in-person services. And so what they're saying there is consider if they were getting therapies, if they were getting something that the school was not able to adapt to be done at home. You need to be looking at that because they weren't getting that at that time. Whether the student continued making progress towards his or her IEP goals. Did they make progress? Did they stay the same? Towards the bottom, we'll see the word regression. Did they fall back? Whether the student experienced any additional or new emotional health issues during building closure and reentry. How are they doing mentally? How emotionally? Is there new things that need to be brought into this IEP to talk about, to plan for? Whether the student experienced any regression during the period of school building closure. The teachers tried their best. When the closure happened, it happened real quickly. They had to adapt. Resources that were at home were very limited for some. And so we really do need to look. Did the child learn well? Did they fall back from where they were at before the closure? If they regressed, maybe that's time to really think about their educational placement or the way in which they're going to learn going forward this year. Okay, so the next section is future services and compensatory services. And so we don't really hear a whole lot about this around here very often. So I'm just going to go through, read one paragraph at a time like I was just a minute ago. The United States Department of Education has advised an IEP team and, as appropriate to an individualized student with a disability, the personal responsibility of ensuring free and public education, FAPE, to a student for the purpose of Section 504 would be required to make an individualized determination as whether compulsory services are needed under applicational standards and requirements. So what they're saying is, do we need to make up services for these children? Do we need to make it up for them? Do they need extended time? Do we need to look at alternative ways of providing these services? And that's the discussion that really needs to happen in that CCC team. I'm going to re-highlight this because it's actually going to bring in the CCC team again here. This does not mean schools must immediately offer compensatory services to all students with IEPs. Rather, it requires the CCC to lead a discussion of the educational needs of the student, including the potential loss of skills based on these individual needs. The CCC may consider the appropriateness of collecting data for an agreed upon time following the student's return to school and subsequently reconvene the discussion or reconvene to discuss the need for further services at that time. So what they're saying is, when they come back to school, it might be appropriate to gather that data, gather that information, and then come back as a team, a CCC team, and make the decision on what's needed. And a lot of these kids are getting a lot thrown at as we go back. So that would really probably be the best thing, because they're able to at least try to adjust to their new normal, their new routine at school, if they are going back in person. And if they're on virtual, they're still adjusting to it, because this is not the same virtual for a lot of children that they had back in the spring. It is important school staff are documenting with specification the special education and related services being provided to students with disabilities while monitoring and tracking individual student progress. This information will be necessary to inform the CCC in making a determination as to whether further services or compensatory services are necessary to ensure the provision of FAPE-free appropriate public education. So what they're just saying is documenting what's going on for this in special education and the related services and monitoring and tracking the students' progress. That's very important. That's something all of us as parents would want to know as we sit down and look to see what they need to move forward. Transitional IEPs. My son's entering this age group, and so it's hard to think about it, but our kids are going to grow up. Some of our kids are going to be able to go out and work and have a different style of life than some of the other children that may be going towards, you might be leaning towards group home or family care. And so these transitional IEPs are really trying to look out and say, what are we going to be doing? And so these are still important. And in COVID-19, it might be hard to look that far out, but we still need to be trying to help them be ready for when school ends. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read through this section. And those of you that might not like me just reading through it, it's just that I don't want to misinterpret what was in this document. This document is still able to be edited by the state, so it's able to be changed if the state doesn't like something in it. Transition assessments need to be updated annually. Hey, our kids, sometimes even annually, ain't going to be enough to keep track of what they love to do or what they want to do. My son switches back and forth between farming and being a mechanic, diesel mechanic, and going to college and trying to figure out there. So annually, he's just saying we need to look at each year and see where they're going to go. Okay. Transitional assessments need to be updated annually, even during COVID-19 pandemic. When updating transitional assessment, teacher of record may conduct assessments virtually or in person. Assessments may be administered prior to or during the case conference committee meeting. In all cases, assessment information needs to be documented with the summary of finding utilizing the SPIN method: strengths, performances, interests, and needs. Ways to provide transitional assessments virtually are available as part of the e-learning resources for secondary transition document. So what they're just saying is we don't want to, what they're saying though is we don't want to stop focusing on the fact that these kids are going to be getting out of school at some point, and we still need to be helping them on guiding them for when that happens. Okay, what password was that? Okay, transitional services still need to be created so that school is the primary service provider. It is recommended that the narrative includes in-person and remote ways to accomplish objectives and goals to accommodate for the fluidity of the COVID-19 situation. So all they're asking or telling us in that paragraph is that for this, we need to make sure that it's wrote in a way that can still be done. If they were in class, if schools had closed down, they had to go to all virtual, we still need to have these documents wrote so that can still accomplish, and so that it's still able to be a part of the active IEP. Okay, so the next section is the CCC, Case Conference Committee, meeting methods. CCC meetings may be conducted virtually while school buildings are closed. Okay, let's reread that one real quick because I know there's a school in Orange County. CCC meetings may be conducted virtually while school buildings are closed. See this guidance document for information on conducting remote CCC meetings. As buildings reopen, CCC meetings may be conducted in person or through virtual means. This one right here, there's one school in Orange County. Your policy reads that you allow visitors in the building as long as they wear masks, hand sanitize, and go through a signs and symptoms check. Your special education section says that all meetings will be virtual. That doesn't seem very inclusive, very welcoming. I can go there and visit, but I can't go there for an educational meeting about the child. That doesn't seem very fair. It feels like it's a discriminative policy. And I understand that a lot of schools are putting in that they have visitor policies when they're limiting visitors to no visitors, but please clearly write it that way. Along with your student handbooks, some schools' student handbooks haven't gotten updated to COVID-19 policies. Okay, evaluations. Oh, I skipped one section, and I'll tell you why. The EdPlan Connect is a system that the state started so that parents could access the IEPs and sign digitally. According to the state, as of right now, they're still looking at ending that program this fall. So that's why I'm not going to really cover that section very much in this webinar. I'm going to move on down to the evaluation section, which is probably going to be one of the most important sections this school year, especially with all the students with adjusting to all these changes. Evaluations. Requirements for evaluations remain unchanged. Please refer to the revised Office of Special Education Evaluation Timeline and Memo. Okay, let's just re-say that. They're unchanged. The state did not change the laws. The timelines and all that were set by the House and the Senate of our state. They haven't been changed. They haven't been wavered. Evaluations may be conducted virtually if the school psychologist has been appropriately trained in conducting virtual assessments and has access to the digital assessments. Additionally, the National Association of School Psychologists has combined resources to support virtual evaluations. This link will take you to the National Association of School Psychologists resources related to evaluations. And remember, if you want to see this document yourself or links, it's in our description. Okay, the next section is the medically fragile students. And this section has really been played on heavy by a lot of the schools' reopening plans for a reason for virtual school being available. But we really need to look through this whole section and the next sections that are going to come because it's really important. And I'm going to highlight this just because it's easier for my eyes to read it. Okay. Medically fragile students are at high risk of several severe medical complications if exposed to COVID-19 and therefore may be unable to attend school. Medically fragile students unable to attend school will need to be provided with educational services remotely. Please note, it doesn't say that they're automatically in virtual school families. The determination of the services to be provided must be made by the case conference committee. Remember, teachers, school, public agency representative, parents, you all are on that committee. You are equal members based upon the individual students' medical and educational needs. Again, we're looking at the students' needs. One size fits all plans that are being put in is why we need a special education section in all the reopening plans. So we can include sections like this to help clarify that above was for our children that are doing great, that don't have the health risk. But for our children in special education, that we need to look at them individually, make sure this is the right decision. Okay. The determination of the services to be provided must be made by the CCC based on the individual student's medical and educational needs. Special education and related services determined by the CCC to be provided online or in a virtual instruction format through instructional telephone calls or through other curriculum-based instructional activities. And then it gives us our Indiana Administrative Code 511-74210. If the services are to be delivered through online or virtual instruction, technology components and the need for additional assistive technology must be considered. The CCC must convene at least every 60 days to review the IEP for every student unable to attend school in person. And remember, we're talking about children that are medically fragile in this situation. Children that their health won't allow them to attend school with what's going on. And the 60 days is to evaluate what's happening with them in their education. It's also to evaluate what's going on in the situation. We don't know what's going to be around the corner. We don't know when a vaccine is going to come out. Things could change where return to school might be safe or virtual's not working, so they need to do homebound instruction with the teacher and making specialized plans where maybe the student comes into the school for a couple hours after school hours with a teacher. There's a lot of different options that are available under an IEP to make sure that it fits that student's needs, but it needs to be done through that CCC, Case Conference Committee. Okay. So the next section is the homebound services. The state included this in this document, so this wasn't left out. It was included so that schools would remember that they're there, that these are important services. Districts and schools must provide special education and related services to a student with a disability who is absent for an extended period of time. And that comes from the U.S. Department of Education question section that they had. It has long been the department's position that when a student with a disability is classified as needing homebound instruction because of a medical problem, as ordered by a physician, and is home for an extended period of time, generally more than 10 consecutive school days, an individualized education plan meeting is necessary to change the student's placement and the content of the child's IEP if warranted. Further, if the IEP goals will remain the same and only the time in special education will change, then the IEP team may add an amendment to the IEP stating the specifically the amount of time to spend in special education. If a child with a disability is absent for an extended period of time because of COVID-19 infection and the school remains open, then the IEP team must determine whether the child is available for instruction and can provide benefit from homebound services such as online, virtual instruction, instruction by phone calls, or other curriculum-based instruction activities to the extent available. And remember that section right there, there was a large highlight section, so they're stressing that to us. In doing so, school personnel should follow appropriate health guidelines to assess and address the risk of transmission in the provision of such services. The department understands that there may be external circumstances that would affect how a particular service is provided. Remember, the special education is not a cookie cutter, it's an individualized system. If a student does not receive services after an extended period of time, a school must make an individualized determination of whether and to what extent compensatory services may be needed, consistent with appropriate requirements, including to make up for any skills that may have been lost. If the school has been provided a statement from the student's physician that the student will be unable to attend 20 or more instructional days, Article 7 requires the school provide instruction to the student during the time the student is unable to attend. Then it goes through and lists where you can find that in Article 7, the Indiana Administrative Code. For students with disabilities, again, another reference, just this line right above the previous one, requires the CCC to determine the appropriate educational services to be provided. Again, we're supposed to come together as a CCC case conference committee team. You're supposed to come together and make those determinations. It's not supposed to be dictated. It's not supposed to be wrote out ahead of time. That's predetermination. It's supposed to come together and make the appropriate decisions as a group. Use of homebound due to infection in students' families. Once school buildings reopen, a student with a disability may be quarantined at home for an extended period of time due to the family member's infection. A school or district would follow the same homebound protocols identified above to ensure the provision of FAPE, free and appropriate public education. School personnel should likewise follow appropriate health guidelines to assess and reduce the risk of transmission in the provision of the homebound services. I'm going to take a quick breath for a second. Use of homebound not related to COVID-19. As schools reopen, students who were receiving services in homebound placements pursuant to their IEP will remain in that placement until the CCC, Case Conference Committee, determines that a different placement is appropriate, whether the location of the homebound service identified in the student's IEP is the student's home or an out-of-district location other than the student's home. School personnel should follow the appropriate health guidelines to assess and reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19. Homebound timeline. Schools must ensure the CCC convenes at least every 60 instructional days. This instructional day counts, including remote learning days used pursuant to the local educational agency's continuous learning plan. When a student receives services in a homebound setting, then it gives us another Indiana Administrative Code 511 IAC 7425A7. Change in the IEP rated to a safer service delivery method during school closure and reentry may be considered by the CCC at those 60-day reconvenience. Okay, so it's saying every 60 days these have to happen. That is the time limit to have these meetings. But also remember, parents, we can request a CCC at any time. So if things change and you're seeing problems, you can request the meeting. If things aren't, you go to teacher record, talk with them. If you feel like you need a full CCC meeting, you can request that and have it. It can be done through Zoom. It can be done through whatever web meeting portal they use. It can be done by a phone call. And it can even still be done in person, depending on local schools' policies on whether or not they're letting people inside the buildings or not. But you can still ask for that CCC meeting. There's a lot of different ways that you can have it to discuss what's right for your child. Special transportation. If districts and schools are providing in-person services and a student requires transportation, then the IEP should reflect this service. What's this meaning is, in an IEP, for some students, it will have special education transport. It will have a section in there added in that's saying they're going to ride a specialized bus with a wheelchair lift, or the special education bus. I'm trying to remember what Valley called it at their meeting, but a specialized bus usually has extra monitor, so sometimes the student is best to ride on that. When that's the case, it's best to have it in this IEP wrote that way. Collaboration with transportation vendors to implement a busing plan that meets social distancing recommendations is imperative, including pickup, in transit, and drop off. It is also important to review cleaning and disinfecting protocols. And this is not the general transportation section. They're restating this again in special education, that it's important to keep the buses clean. And a lot of the bus drivers I've talked with do understand that, and they are planning on trying their best to keep them clean. Therapy. And yes, our schools do provide therapy. Okay, FAPE requires taking into account the needs of individual students. Repeating, FAPE requires taking into account the needs of individual students. Therefore, at a minimum, school reentry plans for providing IEP required therapies in accordance with the CDC community level guidance for schools must address. I'm going to stop right there for a second. The state is saying that these are required, and this is one of those things I just would love to see the schools went through and just list it off, honestly, just answering it on how they're going to do it the best that they can. That way a lot of parents would have had an idea. Okay, number 1, student-specific medical and special transportation needs for transition back into school setting, such as classroom, playground, and day programs for therapy services. You can't go through and publicly release student-specific, but you can release through some of your general things that you're going to be doing to help make this accomplished. And also, if you had a special education section in your plan, it would make it clear that the CCC meeting is going to be critical in making this individualized for them. And hopefully you'd have those meetings before some of your more severe kids come back, severe profound needs come back. And no, I know some schools haven't contacted a couple parents yet. Unique operating conditions include intensified cleaning and disinfecting of equipment and surface between therapy sessions, class and therapy group size reduction, staggered alternating day rotation schedule or space seating to facilitate physical distancing, restricted sharing of equipment, learning aids, and possible shifts to non-traditional class settings to improve ventilation. Instruction about and observations of frequent hand washing and face covering recommendations, remote therapy needs, including assistive technology as necessary for special students populations who cannot yet safely return to congested settings. Contingency plan to continue services if COVID-19 transmission requires intermittent or extended school building closures, and individualized student skill regression or lack of progress in communication with parents and families about IEP therapy services changes and additions to address regression. Number 4, anticipating backlog in evaluations and possible need to prioritize new referrals before reevaluations. Basically, that's just saying make an evaluation plan in case you need it. And we got a lot going on for these kids. There's a lot on these kids' shoulders that we don't really see sometimes. And it's going to possibly affect their education this year. Adequate staffing to meet all student therapy needs, including age and underlying conditions that may preclude qualified personnel from delivering services in the physical proximity of the students and other staff. And I can understand we couldn't disclose the individual things on terms of the individual person or staff member or child. Technology training and access for therapists to serve medically fragile students, such as those who are ventilator dependent and have tracheostomies, trachs, such as those who U.S. Department of Education and Indiana Department of Education COVID-19 web resources on expanding options and Indiana Medicaid coverage for IEP therapy services, and flexible and adaptive scheduling to maximize therapy services provided despite personnel shortages, staff illnesses, isolation, and limited access to students. District requirement to provide equitable services to parentally placed students with disabilities attending reopening non-public school building within the district boundaries. And that's all of the special education section. I'm going to look over here real quick and check our feed. Okay. So went a little bit long tonight. I want to go through and read this directly. I can understand not every single thing is going to be in a plan. You read the Seymour plan, though, it actually talks about having clear see-through masks, which is very helpful for children that need to see facial expressions, children in speech that need to see how to position their tongue or their lips. So there's other plans, though, that have made it clear that they're going to try their best. The most scary thing for me when I read some of these plans, when it doesn't acknowledge special education anywhere, or you acknowledge it, but it's discriminatory statement that we're not going to do this for you, and we'll make this clear right now. We're not going to be individualized. This is how it's going to happen for your child, and that's how you're going to take it. That's concerning to me. That's concerning to some families. I talked with a mom yesterday that has a child with CP, and she doesn't know how her school's reopening plan is going to work for her child. They left out special education. They haven't gotten in contact with her, and their deadline for online registration is coming up. Like a lot of you, that you're facing that same decision. So all I got to ask to the schools, plead to the schools, just add an amendment for special education. Go through answers. Some of this you can just include and make it clear to the families, open information, open knowledge that, hey, what we're saying here doesn't 100% apply for your child, because you need to come in and have a meeting with the case conference committee, and we need to discuss this and make sure this is right for them. Make sure that they're going to be able to learn this way. Make sure that they're going to be able to receive their therapies this way that they receive. Child with receiving physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. There's a lot of therapies that children can be receiving right now. We need to make sure that we have that digital learning plan basically made up for these kids so that we can make sure that they receive what they need even in the digital world. So I don't mean to step on anyone's toes. I know some of the school administrators feel like that's what's happening. but I don't want to see none of these kids fall through the cracks. You guys have a standard that measures the student progress now in special education according to the state. They're going to monitor and make sure that their students are making appropriate gains and learning appropriately. How do you think that's going to work in a couple of years if we don't make sure that, to some extent possible, we're doing the best we can for them today? We're going to see it in the results and stuff in a few years, maybe even sooner. So how about we just try to make sure we have them included in our plans and policies? How about we start having special education directors come into school board meetings once, twice a year? I know some of our school board special ed directors cover 4 counties. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cover 3 counties, but cover a lot of school districts in those counties. But maybe having them come in and give a report to you on how special education is doing, how your students are progressing, what your percent of students with disabilities are in your district. Inviting a teacher in to come in and talk about how their students are doing. You hear about this athletics departments, you hear about the high ability classes in school board meetings. You hear about some of the different clubs. Maybe just having some kind of once a year, twice a year, having them come in and talk about special education programs, how they're doing, what they need help improving, where they'd like to be in 5 years with their program. Maybe that might be helpful for you. Maybe that might be helpful to the families to at least know that you're thinking about their children and planning in the education system in their communities. A lot of the schools, you're doing better with inclusion, a lot less pull-out services, and so thank you. A lot of you teachers, you're doing amazing. You're trying your best, and hopefully you'll have clear instructions on how to do that this year. And if not, hopefully your CCC team will be an amazing group of people, and they'll pull together and make it happen for these kids and for you as the instructor, the teacher record. You hope the teachers carry a big burden. These students going to schools this year, they're going to carry a big burden with all the changes. We need to make sure that they have the resources they need. We need to make sure that they have at least a solid base plan of here's what we're going to try to make sure we have ready at the beginning of school. And then be ready to adapt for what those requests are that they need to finish meeting the student needs. Well, this is Patrick, Community Inclusion Ambassadors Board President. I'm going to sign off here. I'm 13 minutes late for the Zoom meeting, so if you are there and left, I'm heading that way as quick as I can. So thank you, and have a great day.